Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Schaefer. I'm a psychologist and relationship coach and the founder and host of the Finding Love Summit. Welcome. Today, I have with me Dr. Sarah Rattray. Dr. Rattray is a couple psychologist. She helps disconnected couples approaching their empty nest rekindle their relationship. She is the founder and CEO of the Couples Communication Institute, which is dedicated to helping couples achieve lasting closeness and intimacy through effective communication. With over 30 years in private practice, helping hundreds of struggling couples one-on-one, she now makes her proven methods easily accessible online to assist motivated couples everywhere to achieve relationship breakthroughs from the comfort of their home. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. And I'm so excited to talk about what do we do? Essentially, the conversation I want to have with you today is what do we do when we're struggling to communicate with our partners or with our partner? That's really what you and I've talked about, and you've spent a lot of your work on when you work with couples.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the things that people struggle with in the conversations with their partners when things are going, when they've had a hard time, is how do you get to a place where you even feel like it's okay to have that conversation? How do you feel safe in that conversation?
Well, the word that you just used is the key, how to feel safe. So, a lot of us, we are struggling to have the big conversations that we keep not being able to have. And we keep kind of diving into the big conversations, but we don't feel safe. So what I help people do is dial it back and start rebuilding a foundation of small, safe conversations and start with even the safety of how we begin to talk with each other. Um, I'm sure you've experienced this, but with so many people, even the start of a conversation, it feels like you're getting off on the wrong foot. You feel startled or you feel irritated or annoyed, and nothing's even been said yet. So dialing that back so that you feel safe from the start.
Yeah. Okay. So we've all been in those conversations, or we've all started those conversations where when we reflect back on it, we feel the sort of irritation. Maybe we got interrupted, or we were thinking about something else, or we were trying to head in a different place with the conversation, and our partner pulled us off into something
Yes.
else or brought something else up. And that, upon reflection, it's hard when you have those sort of negative, irritated emotions happening. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, even that at the very beginning. So to start having a safe conversation, I talk with people in my course about what to even think about before you start talking. And thinking before you talk is an important step. One reason it's important is that you want to pick one narrow focus to talk about at a time. And you really want it to be a narrow focus. You don't want it to be, a huge, uh, many branched subject. You want to just pick one thing. So if you think first, that gives you the time to reflect on what's the most important or the most basic, most introductory piece of what I want to talk about. And
Yeah,
just
no, that's awesome. Because we've all been in conversations where it's like that in the kitchen sink, everything in the kitchen sink, right?
yes, because a lot of times if we're in a relationship where we're getting distant and and communication is getting challenging, if I finally feel like I have you, like you're in the same room with me and you're talking to me, I'm going to start throwing, and I didn't like the way you did this, and we need to fix this, and when can we talk about this? No, 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 no. But even if we're having, um, a fine conversation, a friend of mine wanted to talk about the upcoming vacation she was having with her husband and the things that they had unresolved, how long they were going to vacation, exactly where they were going to go, where were they going to stay, What kind of car were they going to rent? What kind of flights? They had so many unresolved things. I really talked with her about picking one thing, like maybe how long do we want to go for? And then what you do with that when you decide, okay, what I really want to start with is this one piece, then you let your partner know this ahead of time and you make an appointment to talk. And I know so many of us, if you hear make an appointment to talk to your partner, you think, I don't want to have to make an appointment. But the benefit of that is that both people know what to expect and arrive ready. And we do this in all the rest of our lives. Most of the rest of our lives, we set up appointments and then we know exactly what to expect. So Julie, you and I, we had a Zoom meeting, what was it, 2 or so weeks ago, where
Right.
we explored the possibility of, did we want to have an interview of me
Mhm.
for your summit?
Mhm.
You told me exactly what it was. Sarah, I want to talk with you about being a guest on my summit.
Yes.
We picked a time, we picked the place, Zoom, we picked the topic, and now I'm here ready and you're here ready, and we're in agreement and we're ready to go. If you had just, like, nobody picks up the phone anymore, but if you had just called me today, hi, Sarah, camera's on, I'm ready to interview for my summit, I'd be irritated. I'd be startled. I'd be caught. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You don't have my body. What? We're
Yeah.
doing what?
Right.
Why?
Right.
Um, we want to treat our partner with even more respect and care than we treat other people in our lives. So that's just one piece of it.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I think we tend to, after a while, take our partners kind of for granted. They should be there to talk to
Yes.
us and with us whenever we are ready. Yes. Um, so what I'm getting is that we need to set things up for safety and focus on one thing to talk about. Are we going to have, what do I want to talk about? How long is the trip going to be, even though there's 10 other details to work out? So that's good. What's something else that people need to think about before they have the conversation, in addition to just the one thing?
Well, if you're talking about people who've gone into a pattern where every conversation feels spiky, you might want to think about, do you want to start to talk about talking? Like, do you want your first conversation to be about communication itself? And, I might say to you, I notice that we often get off on the wrong foot when we talk. Can we set up a time to talk about how we can feel safer in our everyday conversations? So set something like that up. So I don't just mean, how can you be safe talking about, my example of vacation, but if I know that we're feeling unsafe together, let's have a conversation about that. And if that doesn't feel safe, what needs to happen first? Is there a way that we can get onto the safest possible, smallest one subject, and then start building from there?
Yeah, that's really good point. Seems like we need to make it small enough that we have a little success and that we can build on that from there.
Yes. And you just said another terrific word, Julie, which is success. Whenever we have any success together, let's celebrate that. So, if you said to me, hey, Sarah, I want to talk about how long to go on vacation or something, I might say, you know what, Julie, I really appreciate the way you asked me. That made me feel, settled and comfortable. That was a great way to open the conversation. Let's do that way some more, or something like that, because it's our tendency in everything to notice and pick up on and comment on the bad things and the negative things. And we do that, ironically, for safety. We do that for protection against danger. But that doesn't bring us closer together. So, if I'm quick to say, I don't like the way you just talked to me, I'm protecting myself against discomfort, but we're not growing closer. So using every possible opportunity to congratulate ourselves on our successes, that starts bringing us closer and making us feel actually safer with each other.
Yeah, that's awesome. It totally is. And I feel like that fight or flight, once it gets triggered, we can start saying things or behaving in ways that aren't really conducive to having the conversation. Are you sort of starting to get into the difference between the content of the conversation and the process of the conversation? Like, talk about the process first.
Well, are you saying, am I suggesting that couples talk about the process first?
Yeah.
Well, let's take a moment to clarify that a little bit more. You put your finger on something tremendously important that I teach couples in my course. There is the content that we're talking about. So maybe it's how long to go on vacation, but the process is how we're talking and how we're treating each other. I know what happens a lot is if we're trying to have a conversation, if my partner I feel like it's being snarky with me. And I say, stop being so snarky. Now we're talking about being snarky and we've lost, we're not talking about vacation
Right.
anymore. And so, but yes, in order to set up a safe conversation, especially if we have been feeling very unsafe with each other, let's just talk about the process. Honey, I know sometimes when we're talking, it doesn't go well. Let's spend some time. Can we talk about how we're talking and iron that out together? Because in the example I just gave, if I said we're talking about snarkiness and we've lost the vacation conversation, the snarkiness is probably a more important conversation to have than the vacation. But if it always feels like it's derailing something, we don't just set aside the time to talk about that.
Okay.
So, if every conversation, if I feel like your tone is snarky and I'm put off, it's time to have a conversation about snarky tone. But I don't know, we wouldn't necessarily introduce it with those words. But yeah, how
Right.
we talk is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. It also seems like it's going to be really important to know how you're feeling about something. So if you want to talk about the vacation, but you're feeling hesitant because you know that these conversations haven't always gone well in the past, that preparation work where you think about the one thing, wouldn't it also be important to figure out how you're feeling about it or what you're scared about?
Yes. So what I encourage you to do is inside yourself to figure out exactly, like you said, what's the one thing you want to talk about and how you feel about it. And then you're going to let your partner know about that when you want to request the conversation. And it's really valuable. So it's a world of difference to say, I'd like to talk about how long to go on vacation because I'm so excited to get out of town. I'm bursting with excitement to talk with you. Is a very different setup than, and I'm really scared that my boss is going to say I don't have any time off left to take. Those are two tremendously different conversations. And if I know what's going on inside me and I share with you what's going on inside me, then we're both prepared for the same conversation. So if you think I'm wanting to talk about how long it could take because I want to go for 2 months and I'm excited, but really I'm afraid I won't even be able to get 5 days because my boss is going to turn me down. Like, we want to be on the same page going into that conversation. And
Right.
then another part that goes along with that, Julie, I'll just say real quick, I do spend more time on this on the course, is what do I want to get out of this conversation? So, again, ahead of time, so you're prepared. Am I going to be asking you to solve the problem for me? Am I going to be just wanting to vent about something and I just want you to listen? Am I wanting to understand more about your views about it? These are very different kinds of agendas. Do I want you to be my cheerleader? Do I want, what do I want from this conversation? To also let you know ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. Um, you said something just in this last answer to my question that made me think, oh my goodness, we have to talk about listening. Um, I think I've been a therapist for 15 years. You've been doing this for 30. I think listening is a really undervalued skill. We don't even know when we're not listening. So how does listening play a role, and what do you tell your clients about listening?
Julie, yes. um, So, earlier when you mentioned the difference between the content of what we're talking about and the process of how we're communicating, especially the longer we've been in a relationship together and the busier our lives are, our communication tends to just be an exchange of information. Hey, the plumber's coming tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Can you be home to let them in? You know, the electric bill is due. We need to make sure paid it. Like, we're just exchanging information. So if you say to me, the plumber's coming tomorrow at 1, my answer is going to be, got it. That's not connecting us. So when to listen for connection is my biggest goal for helping couples, that to every opportunity of when you're communicating, I'm sorry, every conversation is an opportunity to get closer. It's not as important that it's an exchange of information. So here's what I'm saying. If you say to me, plumber's coming tomorrow at 1 o'clock, I say, got it. You don't necessarily feel any closer to me, and you certainly don't know whether or not I actually heard you. Did I hear the time? Is the time that came out of your mouth what you meant to say? Did I hear it correctly? What time zone are we in? On Zoom type of a thing. So I want to share, if this is what you're looking for, I want to share some tips for listening. Does that work?
Oh, absolutely. I think we always need more tips for listening. Yeah.
So I heard you say that we all need more tips for listening. So what I just did was I repeated back what I heard you say, and I saw you nod. That's really important. One of the things I'm sure that's happened with you and every single listener is we misunderstand each other. So, if I thought you said some tips for speaking, and then I respond to that, no, you said tips for listening. So when I repeat back what I heard you say, it's a chance for us to say, just a quick check-in. Okay, we're on the same page. Good to know. One of the things that I just mentioned was that exchange of information. We're used to doing that. Another thing that we all want to do is we all want to be right, and we all want to share what we know. And sometimes we think that by sharing what we know, it's a way of listening. It's not a way of listening at first. So what I really want to encourage people to do is begin to practice to listen so that you can make a picture in your own mind of the picture that your partner has in their mind. So that involves asking questions so that you can get more and more clear about what the person is saying, and that you hold your own thoughts, your beliefs, your ideas about it. You just hold that to the side. It doesn't really matter right now. So let's say I say to you, how long do you want to go on vacation for? I want to start listening to what you're telling me. How long do you want to? And maybe I'll ask you, what made you choose that amount of time? And what would that amount of time be like? And I'm going to ask you those questions. So let's say you want to go for 2 weeks. I don't want to debate you. I don't want to play devil's advocate. I don't want to tell you that you're right or wrong. So I don't want to say, well, that's too short for where we're going. Or that's way too long. We'll never be able, No, now I'm not listening anymore. Now I'm just arguing with you.
Right.
So if you say you want to go on vacation for 2 weeks, oh, tell me more about that. Why did you come up with 2 weeks? I'm curious. I'm interested. I'm not going to jump to any conclusions ahead of time, like I know already where you're going with something like that. So asking curious questions to deepen my understanding of what you're talking about, repeating back, as I mentioned before, to make sure I've heard what you said. And the third thing, when listening, especially kind of towards the end of maybe a section of what someone has said, is to validate what the other person has said. So I want to define that, but before I go on, just any questions or thoughts?
Well, I'm having a thought, but I'm always having thoughts about things. But and I'm going to want to follow up on something, but I'd like to hear this last tip and then I'll ask my question.
Okay. So validation means, can I see in my own head and let you know that what you are saying makes sense for who you are, or what it makes sense for what's important to you, or makes sense for what you believe in. So let's suppose you say you want to go on vacation for 2 weeks because you have 2 weeks of available vacation, and the place that we want to go, you really want to explore it. So to validate you, I would say, wow, Julie, it sure makes sense to me that you want to go for 2 weeks, because that's the amount of time that you have off. And, if we spend 2 weeks, in a place, we'll really be able to explore it. That makes sense to me for what's important to you. I know how much you want to explore that place. But let's say you said to me, now I only have 2 weeks of vacation for my job, and I want to go for 2 months. This doesn't make sense to me for you.
Right.
Okay, Julie, I'm confused. You said you want to go away for 2 months, but you only have 2 weeks vacation. I don't get it. Can you help me understand that? Because it's not making sense for you. All right. Now let's give a different example. You want to go away for 2 weeks. I only want to go away for a long weekend. I'm not going to say to you, you want to go for 2 weeks. That doesn't make any sense. We shouldn't go away for any longer than a long weekend. That doesn't make sense. No, I'm talking about me in that case. I want to say validation means this makes sense for you.
Okay. But
And
yes, the person you're listening to
the person I'm listening to. And to take it even deeper, is there a way that I can support you? So if you want to go away for 2 weeks, can I say, I really hear how much you want to go away for 2 weeks. I want to figure out if there's a way that I can make that happen for you. Even if I don't want to go away for 2 weeks, I want to go away shorter or longer. Is there a way that I can support you in this? And that's going to bring us closer.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's so awesome. And when you gave the validating statement and told me how much you understood why I wanted to go for 2 weeks, it felt really like, yeah, she gets where I'm coming from, even though that wasn't my example. That was your example. So that was a really good example of validation. And we can often kind of that can go south on us if we start talking about ourselves, or we bring in another topic right there in that moment. So we need to stick with what the person's talking about that we're listening to. It's part of what I'm hearing you say. And that means setting aside a lot of what you're thinking about and just focusing on where they're coming from and getting clear on that and reflecting that back to them. Does that sum that up?
That's exactly it. I'm going to have a chance to share with you my thoughts, but I'm setting those aside for now. I'm just focusing on you. And Julie, it's so funny that you said, when I validated you, even though it wasn't your example, you felt heard, you felt better. And that's the key, that real good communication is a dialogue, meaning two-way conversation. So if I really listen to you and I validate you, there's going to be a shift in you where you're going to feel seen, heard, and understood, you're going to relax and you're going to open up. And at a point, you'll just be smiling and you're like, you get it. Now I want to hear from you. And that's the deeper safety. And that's where communication really turns the corner for couples.
Yeah. And, as the recipient of your example, I could feel my own, I don't know, physiology shift might be the best way to describe that.
Yes.
But I imagine if you're in a couple talking about something, you might actually be able to see that in your partner, like an exhale of sorts. I can imagine being able to do that, at least with some people. One of the things that I've run into when I work with people around listening is for feeling afraid that you're going to forget to say something if all you do is focus on what the other person is saying. Have you run that into that too, where they don't, where one of the couple doesn't want to just listen because they're afraid they're going to forget their point?
Absolutely. So I have a couple things to say about that. One is, remember I was saying earlier that you might have to back up and have tiny little conversations. If I know I'm the type of person who is always afraid I'm going to forget, so I want to say something, I might have a little conversation with my partner that goes like this. And I would introduce the conversation first, get my partner's agreement that we're going to talk. And then what I would say is, I am often concerned that I'm going to forget what I'm going to say. So I have an idea. How about when we're talking, is it okay if I have a pad of paper with me, and that if I think of something, that I just jot it down while I'm listening? And that way I don't have to interrupt you. And that way we don't have to go off on all these tangents. Would that be comfortable for you if I did that while we were talking?
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah, so this is a separate little pre-conversation that we would have at its own time. It's about one tiny little topic. Can I bring a pad of paper with me when we're talking? And if we're in agreement, the next time we're talking, I might say, honey, I got my pad of paper. So if you see me write something down, it's just so that I'm not going to interrupt you.
Yeah.
So to answer your question a little bit more fully, if you have that set up, yeah, feel free just to don't write down the whole argument, but just write down like long weekend or, whatever 2 words or something you're going to remind you. But another thing that I have found is that actually we don't tend to forget, that when it's our time to talk, we usually remember what's important. And if it wasn't important, it was probably just some kind of a debate point, and maybe it's fine if we set that to the side.
Yeah, it can be fine to set it aside, and it can also become a moot point if you explore the other person's point and they answer your question or give you some information that makes you realize it wasn't important anyway. So yes, absolutely.
Agree.
You also talked about a dynamic where I am, let's say I'm talking to you, and then instead of reflecting back and exploring my experience, you go on to talk about your experience. You do that because, or you might do that because you think you're making a connection with me, like, oh, we had a similar experience, but that's not the way it feels on the receiving end of that. If I understood what you were referring to early on, I don't know if you remember that, but that's a dynamic that I think a lot of people run into, where they're trying to tell a story and then the person they're talking to starts telling their story. How do you talk to couples about that, or where does that fall into on the listening end of it?
Julie, that dynamic, is very positive in a lot of kinds of situations. If I'm with my girlfriends and we get closer by sharing that we've had similar experiences, that feels good.
Mm-hmm.
If I said, oh my God, this thing happens to me. Oh yeah, that happens to me too. And oh yeah, that happens to me too. I feel better. I'm not alone. So again, that can be a single focus of conversation with our partner. How do we each feel when the other person starts sharing a similar story? If that's a dynamic, if that's a dynamic that derails you regularly with your partner, then bring it up. Or in the moment, as you get safer, there's a way to comfortably say, I would love to hear your story, honey, a little bit later. Right now, I would like to keep talking about my experience. But yeah, to be able to put a name to it and say, that's not what I need right now. That's a really important thing to do.
So it's an important dynamic, but it has its place. And maybe it's important to, if it's an issue for you or for your partner, to be able to name it and talk about it and to know when to use it and when not to use it.
Yes. And if I'm the listener, let's say you're telling me the story and the exact same thing happened to me. I could say, would it be okay if I shared with you a similar story that happened to me right now? Or maybe should I share it later? And I'll throw that over to you.
Yeah.
And you could say, actually, can we hear that later? I'm not ready for that right now.
Yeah.
Great. We're staying safe. We're staying on the same page. So if something occurs to me to tell you, when you're the speaker, you have the floor. This is your time. So as the listener, I'm going to check in with you. I might say any number of things. Can I repeat back what I heard you say for just a minute? Give you the opportunities to say yes or no. Can I share with you a similar experience that I've had about that? Give you the opportunity to say yes or no. Can I ask you a couple of questions about that? All of those things.
And it sort of occurs to me as you're talking through this process of having a better, more focused conversation, that each of those little tiny interactions creates safety and also helps build trust, especially if the trust has been broken, even if it's just broken in small ways throughout the course of the relationship. This really helps restore that. What if we have a bigger break in trust? Can you get it back?
That's a big topic.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yes. Well, let's put off to the side for just a second. Can you get it back? But when you were saying that those kind of check-ins, they build safety and they also do build trust. They build trust that I trust that you have my best interest at heart, that you have my own feelings and my safety and my comfort at heart. That builds trust. So can we get back trust when it's been broken? Yes, we can. An important ingredient is two people being motivated to regain the trust. That's an important starting point to be able to answer, can you get back trust when it's been broken?
Can you have different kinds of trust in the relationship? Can you have trust that your partner's going to be one way in one situation, but not trust them in another situation? Have you run into that before?
Yes. I mean, I assume you're saying like, I trust them as a parent to my children, but when we go out to a party, I don't trust them with the women there.
Yeah,
like something like that.
Yeah. Or maybe they'll get drunk and I'll have to drive home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, that there's a lot of factors in there, both what's important to me, what are my areas of vulnerability, but definitely there are going to be, it's not just with trust, but it's about kind of compatibility or areas of disagreement or vulnerability that between us, it's around parenting. If it had been us, it would be about drinking, in this other area, it's about being late or on time, that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that you could have different levels of trust in different situations with your partner. And then those would be things that you could just work on independent. It's not about just the relationship?
Yes and no. I think the overarching idea of trust is that you, as my partner, I trust that you actually think about me first, or maybe you think about me second, but I'm really high up there on your list of priorities. So whether it comes to parenting our children or drinking or, you know, all the purchases, timeliness, that you think about me. And I know you think about me. And maybe you come home and tell me, honey, I was going to play one more round of the thing, but I remembered that you had said you wanted to get together with me. So I came home. Like, oh my gosh, that builds trust. Or honey, I was really angry at the kids and I wanted to take away their toy, but I remembered the conversation that you and I had where you said you wanted to try this other approach. So I didn't. When you take me into account, that's just always building and rebuilding and solidifying the trust that we have in each other.
Yeah, I really like that. You summed it up well, and so that we can apply that to all these different situations we might find ourselves in with our partner. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Did you take me into account?
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to know that. That's so important. A lot of times people get what they refer to as triggered. And they often have these situations that repeatedly trigger them emotionally, where they sort of lose control, or they don't feel like they have a lot of control emotionally if their partner does something or brings something up, and they just flare up, right? I'm curious, like how do you deal with that dynamic within these conversations that you're having?
One of the most valuable tools that a person can develop in themselves is an awareness of their own body and what's going on. So yes, we all have triggers, and what the word triggered means, at least in my mind, is it's triggering my fight or flight response. It's triggering me to sense danger. Danger means some level of discomfort, some level of feeling threatened inside. And so something triggers my self-protective, defensive, angry physiological response in my body. So as we can get more and more aware of what are we feeling in our body when we're triggered, or what is the pattern of thoughts that we tend to have, or what is a phrase that comes to mind that we want to say when we're triggered, that opens the door to a whole new category of safer responses, of safer choices. So, as I become more and more aware of, I don't know, let's say, you accuse me of being like my mother, and I know that triggers me. At another time, we can have a conversation just about that phrase and how it feels to me, and could you please not? But also, as I feel the feelings rise up in me, can I let you know ahead of time that in those cases, I might excuse myself? So I might say, as I mentioned to you before, I'm talking about if we set this up ahead of time,
Right.
with our partner for
Right.
a pattern. You're talking about a pattern of trigger. Yeah. Honey, it just pushed my button. I'm getting upset. Please excuse me. I'm going to go take a break for a few minutes and calm down. If we set this up with our partner ahead of time, where that doesn't mean I'm abandoning you, it doesn't mean I'm punishing you, it means I need to calm down my fight or flight response and get myself relaxed. Go away for a few minutes. 20 minutes is a perfect amount of time if you have that. And then come back and say, when you use that phrase, it got me upset and I wasn't able to hear you. Can we start over again without that phrase? or something like that. That's one way to deal with triggers.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I really like that because what you're doing is you're reflecting on what triggers you, getting to know that sensation, the way your thoughts process that. And then if it occurs during a conversation, you've made an agreement with your partner that, okay, this is a thing that upsets me. I'm going to let you know if that happens. I'll go take care of myself. And when I'm ready, I'll come back and we can restart the conversation if you're still available and go from there. But you don't make them responsible for that thing that's upsetting to you that triggers your fight or flight. You go calm yourself down and then you can continue the conversation at that point.
Well, right now, Julie, you and I are shining a spotlight on just a few moments in what could happen between the two of you. Yeah, I'm taking responsibility for my own reaction. I'm calming myself down. But assuming that we are working on building our safety between the two of us, at some point, I want to share with you. I just made up that example of you're telling me I'm like my mother. I want to share with you why that triggers me. I want to tell you a couple of stories about how that expression came to be so upsetting for me. What is it about that? Share these stories with you in such a way that you really understand it. And you in your own self think, wow, I love my partner. I don't want to compare her to her mother anymore because I can now really understand how distressing that is for her. I'm going to stop. It's not going to just work for me to say, don't say that anymore. Like,
Right.
And then in turn, there's probably a reason why you reach for that phrase. Can we take some time to explore that?
It just seems like that's such a great opportunity for connection in that moment of talking about what's going on with you when you get triggered by that, why I said that. Yeah, it could further the connection between the partners.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. Well, this has been a far-ranging and very good conversation. We're going to be putting your lead magnet up on the speaker page so people can find you online and get connected with you that way. And we're also you've got a course available. You want to tell everybody a little bit about your course and what that is?
Yes. So my first course is up right now. It's called Couples Communication Made Easy. Be seen, be heard, be understood. And what it covers is virtually everything that we've talked about today and more, really broken down into easy to understand and easy to use pieces, because I want you to have all the baseline ingredients you need to have a good, safe, and connected conversation with your partner. These are all the fundamentals that I've been teaching couples for 30 years in private practice. And together with your partner, or even just on your own, being the leader in your relationship, you can understand why these steps are valuable and learn exactly what to do to have safe and connected conversations together.
Oh, that's great. I really like that. I think that's going to be a really important course or bit of content for people to start to understand. And you're going to be offering participants who purchase the all access pass a discount on your course, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Well, I think we can wrap it up here. We've got people who've listened to this have got a lot to digest, I'm sure. And it's been really great connecting with you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on, Julie. And I just also want to say, as you mentioned on my page, you'll find the quiz and other free tools that you can have available. So go check that out.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Julie.
Take care.